Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace and blessed beneficence be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our reading and discussion of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. Patanjali's Yoga Sutras as presented to us by Swami Prabhavananda and Christopher Isherwood in an interpretation and commentary titled How to Know God, which lets you know how much of a workbook this is. How to know God according to Patanjali, as interpreted and commented on by Swami Prabhavananda with the assistance of Christopher Isherwood. Is Haima with us? No. Balakrishna is not with us? No. So who will?
I am here, Shankaraji.
You are good. Good. So do you feel like reading, dear?
Yeah, but I don't know where, because I missed a couple of classes, so I don't know where exactly.
Okay. Turn to chapter 2. Sutras, we're in the 50s. I'll tell you.
Yeah, I know. We started chapter 3, no? Ours.
Oh, we did start chapter 3. You're absolutely right.
I got
We
us
started chapter 3.
I got us on number 7 in chapter 3.
So very good. Thank you very much, Glenn. So so it's Sutra number 7, chapter 3.
Yes. Hari Om.
Hari Om. Thank you, Glenn.
These 3 are more direct aids to experience than the 5 limbs previously described.
Go back to the previous one so we know what these 3 mean.
Yes. When that's Sutra number 4. When these 3, concentration, meditation, and absorption, are brought to bear upon one subject, they are called samyama.
Okay, so that's what we're talking about. So go back and read 7 again, please.
These 3 are more direct aids to experience than the 5 limbs previously described. That is to say, the first 5 limbs of yoga are only a form of training the aspirant to prepare him for the practice of samyama, concentration, meditation, absorption. The mind and senses have to be purified by the cultivation of ethical virtues, and the whole organism has to be strengthened in order that it may be able to undergo the tremendous experiences that await it. But this is just the beginning. Even the perfection of samyama is just the beginning. For whenever we are inclined to feel proud of some tiny indication of spiritual growth in ourselves, we shall do well to remember Brahmananda's amazing and sobering words, spiritual life begins after samadhi.
Spiritual life begins after samadhi. So everything else is preparation. Does that mean it's inconsequential? Absolutely not. Because it directs our attention away from the outer world, the world of the senses, the gunas, time, space, and causation, and directs it inward to the world of spiritual development and a greater understanding of the truth of our being. So it isn't as if when Brahmananda says spiritual life begins, there is another life that has its two aspects. Before spiritual life as a pure way of being begins. But that does not mean it's inconsequential, and it does not mean it is something that we should shun in the sense of repress or run away from. We should come to grips with temporal life, the life of being and doing, and we should turn our attention within and through these 5 preparatory steps, which include dharana, which is concentration. And so that's actually the 6th step. So this is all very auspicious that we're doing this. And when Brahmananda says that, he doesn't mean to imply that the other is not consequential.
Can I call you a little later? I'm in a class.
So is there any comment or concern or question that is raised by this particular series of sutras about samadhi, samyama, or samyama, and what is meant by spiritual life? All right, please read on.
Remember Brahmananda's thing. Spiritual life begins after samadhi, where we don't get carried away with our egotistic mind.
No. Well, that, of course, is an ever-present issue. We can get enthusiastic about our spiritual, our being and creating and doing and sharing. And we get enthusiastic about that, and we think that something wonderful is happening. Well, something wonderful is happening. But we have to then keep in mind, lest we get this ego sense in exaggeration, what all of the scriptures say. God alone is the doer. And so all of this preparation of the body and strengthening of the mind, strengthening of the inner mind, and the very body itself is all very, very important. So not to be dismissed, but to remember that it is God alone, in Sri Ramakrishna's words, Mother alone, Mother being in charge of time, space, and causation, Mother alone that is the doer. Any comments, concerns, or questions? All right, please read on, Balakrishna.
Oh, I have a quick question.
Number,
Yes, Jenny. Yes, Janaki.
Yes. So I know you normally talk about contemplation, concentration, and meditation. Isn't that true? And this
Yes.
says concentration, meditation, and absorption.
Yes.
Is it the same thing in your mind?
Well, contemplation is preparatory to concentration. So the Swami and Patanjali are starting with concentration. But for those of us who are still early in our practice, and that means decades, still early, we contemplate what it is that we're going to concentrate on, so that we can get focused on what it is and why it deserves our attention. And then we are able to separate our attention from distractions by saying, no, I'm contemplating this, and this then becomes the object of my concentration. When concentration is sustained for a period of time, it becomes meditation. Meditation becomes absorption. This is this samadhi. So I don't normally mention samadhi. I do talk about savikalpa samadhi from time to time, but I talk about the 3 steps that are preparatory and to this absorption. The lower form of absorption is called savikalpa samadhi, but that doesn't mean it is inconsequential in any sense of the word. It gives you a sense that God alone or the divine alone is real, and that somehow you are inseparably a part of that. So that's the differentiation. Janaki, does that make sense?
Yes, it makes total sense. In fact, I thought that's probably what it was, but I just wanted to bring it up anyway.
Very good. I'm glad you made the clarification. Anything else from anyone? All right, dears, please let's read on.
number 8. But even these are not direct aids to the seedless samadhi. The practice of samyama leads to the lower samadhi. But the seedless samadhi, nirvikalpa, demands a further and even more intense spiritual effort. See chapter 1, Aphorism 51. Nearly everything Patanjali says here on the subject is simply recapitulation.
Recapitulation.
Oh, sorry. Yes, recapitulation. Patanjali now speaks of nirvikalpa. Number 9.
Now notice this number 9. This is the end, the culmination of what has been discussed in these sutras 1 through 8. Now, number 9, again, I point out, Patanjali is a scientist, but he's a scientist within the Vedic and Samkhya philosophies. So he's not going to ignore or be careless about how these are numbered. This is deeply significant, number 9. All right, please, Balakrishna.
When the vision of the lower samadhi is suppressed by an act of conscious control, so that there are no longer any thoughts or visions in the mind, that is the achievement of control of the thought waves of the mind.
Which is the object, is the aim of yoga. It's said right at the very first sutra of chapter 1. Yoga is control of the thought waves of the mind. So now we have come to what Patanjali is discussing as the fulfillment of that goal.
Okay.
Any
We-
comments? Any
we
comments?
have-
Hey, hold on, Balakrishna. Anything at all from anyone about any of that? All right, please go on.
Okay, we have 9, 10, 11, and 12 sutras. After that, there is an explanation.
Okay.
Okay, so number 10, sutra number 10. When this suppression of thought waves becomes continuous, the mind's flow is calm. Number 11, when all mental distractions disappear and the mind becomes one-pointed, it enters the state called samadhi. Number 12, the mind becomes one-pointed when similar thought waves arise in succession without any gaps between them. And the explanation for these 4 sutras, it has been said that if the mind can be made to flow uninterruptedly towards the same object for 12 seconds, this may be called concentration. If the mind can continue in that concentration for 12 times 12 seconds, it is 2 minutes and 24 seconds, this may be called meditation. If the mind can continue in that meditation for 12 times 2 minutes and 24 seconds, that is 28 minutes and 48 seconds, this will be the lower samadhi. And if the lower samadhi can be maintained for 12 times that period, that is 5 hours, 45 minutes, and 36 seconds, this will lead to nirvikalpa samadhi.
Now, this is the scientist at work. The scientist gives us very accurate definitions of concentration, meditation, the lower samadhi, and the higher samadhi. Any comments from your own wisdom or experience about this? Anything at all in the way of a concern or a clarification needed?
Brother,
Yes, Kenneth.
I'm still back on 9, where it says when the vision of lower samadhi is suppressed by an act of conscious control. It's like I'm still trying to get my mind around that.
Well, what we read again what it says.
It says when the vision of lower samadhi is suppressed by an act of conscious control, so that there are no longer any thoughts or vision in the mind.
Mm-hmm. All right. When I said savikalpa samadhi, this lower samadhi, you actually see everything else that exists in the mind is pushed to the periphery. It doesn't go away. It returns when this lower samadhi ends. But when you're in that state of the lower samadhi, you actually see this vision of the oneness, the unity of all being and creation, all time, space, and causation, everything without exception is contained within that divinity. You actually see it, and you see yourself as somehow inseparably and inextricably a part of that. That is a very, very ennobling and fulfilling vision. Over time, it will recur. Your concentration sustains long enough to where you have that vision over and over. But as Lord Jesus Christ said, it's still seeing as through a glass darkly. You can see the flame beyond the glass, but you can't touch it. You can't consume yourself in it like a moth would consume itself in a flame. So, and it is not an easy thing to set this aside and, in a sense, plunge into the abyss of the void of no thought waves at all in the mind. This Savikalpa Samadhi is one great thought wave that sustains itself. Now, is there any compulsion to do any of this? No. It is a matter of invitation by the divine. You may go beyond what you ever dreamt was or was possible. And so you accept the invitation, first of all, to practice contemplation, concentration, and meditation. And then this fulfills itself in this lower samadhi, which, as I said, is not to be dismissed. It is devoutly to be wished that we achieve this. But if we wish to go beyond and fulfill the complete promise of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, then that too must be, it isn't suppressed, it is looked away from.
Brother Shankar,
Basically,
Yes, dear.
You've also mentioned that early parts of this, establishing your practice and practicing being faithful to it, or self-effort, and then later parts of it happen to you.
Yes.
And it sounds though from the tenor of what he's writing here, it's more effort on your own part.
Sri Ramakrishna says no. Sri Ramakrishna says now, in this time, in this age, we're not really capable of doing it for ourselves. So what it is that the mother does it for us. The Divine Mother releases us, gives us this samyama, and then finally beyond samyama, nirvikalpa samadhi. She holds the key, he says. And so this is, Patanjali is speaking from one point of view, the Vedic and Samkhya philosophies. Sri Ramakrishna is speaking from his personal experience of Mother Kali. I can't imagine, but what Patanjali would do would be simply bow down to Sri Ramakrishna, recognizing him for who he is. So Swami Prabhavananda is explaining what Patanjali says. If you speak to Swami Prabhavananda personally, he will be happy to tell you this other that Sri Ramakrishna told his disciples, and his disciples have passed along to us. And if you ask your teacher about it, Swami Sarvadevananda, if you ask him about it directly, I'm sure he will tell you exactly what I've said.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Okay. Glenn, was there something else
Yeah.
for you?
So basically, let's see if I got this right. In that once you've had the first Savikalpa Samadhi or the first few, then the spiritual life begins because now you have the paradigm shift where it's not a construct, it's existential. But is he basically saying don't attach to that state?
We must not attach to anything, because all states are a state of this stardust spacesuit. They are not the reality. The reality is beyond all description, infinite. I mean, the words tell us that it's beyond description, infinite, eternal, changeless. We can only say those words and imagine what they mean, but we don't really know. But that is the reality. That is Brahman. That is Nirguna Atman. And so we must not attach to anything that has to do with Saguna Atman, Saguna Brahman, also called Shakti or Maya, or time, space, and causation. No, we must not attach ourselves to any of that. But that doesn't mean that Savikalpa Samadhi is inconsequential. Anything but, because as you said, it brings about a paradigm shift. You cannot see your world of time, space, and causation the same way at all, even after the first experience, and it is still an experience. Experience, experiencer, experienced. But it changes everything. So anything else? Thank you, Glenn. That's a very pertinent question.
I've got another question.
Yes, dear.
So what is your thinking or the thinking about people that are going through the death process in terms of this type of thing? I know that's a very general question, but it must be related a little bit.
Well, we really don't know anything about death except what it says in the Katha Upanishad and elsewhere in the Upanishads. But we do have a lot of testimony from near-death experiencers. A lot of testimony, millennia old. And though it's always culturally biased by the culture in which the person had the near-death experience, the basic elements, if you study Raymond Moody, Kenneth Ring, the others who have, Pim van Lommel, who have studied near-death experience, what we see is the first thing that happens is they experience something like Savikalpa Samadhi once they get past the preliminary aspects. Many people who have near-death experiences don't get past the preliminary aspects, that is to say, being greeted by the light and welcomed to this subtle realm of reality. And so then these people, those people often reluctantly return to their embodiment. There are people then who go beyond that, and their being and personality, as they have understood it, is absorbed. There's this word absorption, is absorbed in the light. And though they return out of that, they are totally transformed, totally transformed. If you read their experiences, they're simply, oftentimes it's very difficult for them to live in the world and sustain the worldly life that they had before. Because and do what is always told to them. No, you must return to embodiment because there's still work to do. That is to say, within the terms we understand, there is still prarabdha karma to be lived out. And so this is, but it's often very difficult for them, very difficult. And some of them do become monastics, a very few, but many simply live a very separated life, though always, it seems, serviceful. Though they're separate from society and its concerns. Whitman describes it so beautifully in Song of Myself. Clearly, he had these experiences himself. And so he says, apart from the pulling and hauling stands what I am. And so this is what we know about death and the experience of people who are dying. There's a lot of new work being published too by hospice nurses and people who tend to the dying about the marvelous experiences that many of these people, not all of them, but many of them have. I mean, they relate them to, they're talking of them as they're experiencing them, and then they sometimes tell the hospice nurse about them. Does that answer your question, Janaki?
Yes, and I was just thinking, could you say that Salvikapa Samadhi is kind of, you know it, and Nirvikalpa Samadhi is you are it?
Well, that's a good way to put it, because there is no knower. The mind has been left behind. When all thought waves are suppressed, as Vivekananda says in his preface and introduction to Raja Yoga, when you succeed in stilling all of the vrittis, all of the mental modifications, all of the thought waves, when you succeed in stilling all of the thought waves in the mind stuff, the chitta, which is not in the brain, it's in the brain, yes, but it's throughout the whole body. Every fiber of your body contains this aspect of chitta, mind stuff. When you still the thought waves, when you still the vrittis in the chitta, your universe disappears. Now, your universe contains your ability to perceive and think about things. This is what Christ is pointing to when he says, you will achieve the peace. Oh, I forgot.
Passeth all understanding.
Thank you. The peace that passeth all understanding. Understanding is a matter of thought and speech. The peace that passeth all understanding. This is what Christ is pointing to. He's pointing to Nirvikalpa Samadhi, Nirvikalpa Samadhi. So you're right in saying you are that. You become one with the divine being, one with Brahman is the way it's commonly spoken of in the Upanishads. You are inseparable, and though you may return to the body, you only do that in order to serve as a teacher. And very few do this. Most just never return from Nirvikalpa Samadhi, we're told. They achieve that and then they go on to whatever it is that is next. If there is any next, if we can say next in that context. Some return, and Sri Ramakrishna affirms what's in the Upanishads, that they will last a maximum of 21 days. And I've never read or heard any explanation for why 21 days. Clearly, something has to be lived out. But just what that is, I've never heard said. But some very few, Sri Ramakrishna says, they have this, they retain a slender thread of ego, either of love or of wisdom. You can see the manifestation of that ego of wisdom in Adi Shankaracharya. You can see this manifestation of the ego of love in the Buddha or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or for that matter, the two of them together, it seems, which is why Vivekananda described Sri Ramakrishna the way he did, both of them together in Sri Ramakrishna.
Thank you.
Anything else from anyone?
Yeah, getting back to the style of Patanjali style of writing sutra and the number 9.
Yes.
What is it that is happening? Is there a kind of a shift in the thread of discussion with every 9? And here in this particular case, it seems like we're moving from samyama to how to go beyond samyama.
Exactly. This, you've identified both things correctly. 9 is the end of the series. The 9 is the end of whatever has been developing from 0 is the unmanifest. 1 is the first manifestation. Whatever seed is going to be watered and flourish and result in some fruit, some result. It goes through the numbers 1 through 9. When we get to 9, 9 is the end of the series. It's something new. So you very correctly, Bhaskar, identified what it is that why Patanjali numbered that sutra 9. And then you'll notice that 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, these add to 1, 2, 3, are the beginning, which Prabhavananda said, the beginning of spiritual life, as identified by Brahmananda.
So I also have another question on Sutra number 12.
Yes.
And the detail interpretation there is a whole bunch of 12s and multiplication of 12, which sounds very, like you say, scientific. But exactly where is this? What is the source of this? Where is it coming from? I mean, obviously the sutra did not have this written. Someone else wrote this interpretation, right?
Well, it is in the yogic literature that goes back millennia. You'll find gestures to it in the Upanishads, but it was regarded as very secret knowledge by the Brahmins, who were the possessors of these knowledges for millennia. And so you don't, but if Swami Prabhavananda hasn't got a footnote about his source for this, this means it is embedded in the literature, so to speak, or the traditional thinking of the yogis for a long, long time.
Kind of generally accepted.
It is very generally accepted, yes.
Thank you.
I mean, if you want to discuss this in more detail, when Swami Sarvadevananda comes in mid-May, on the afternoon of the 15th and the morning of the 16th, he will have times for private interviews. And he will know perhaps in more detail, certainly he will know in more detail than I do, about the derivation of this 12, 12 times 12, and so on.
Thank you.
Mhm. Anything else from anyone?
So I haven't read ahead, but does he go into the why and how of you end up in the void versus the other states?
I think what he's done is he's already explained it, Glenn. What we'll go into now is a discussion of other kinds of powers that arise from making this attempt, and the dangers that are associated with yielding to the temptation of using those powers, which are psychic powers, not spiritual powers. But because you've attained such great control of the mind and the psyche, as Vivekananda says, this is psychic control, control of the mind, of the psyche. Now, great temptation arises to experience the fruits of other kinds of powers, psychic powers. So we'll see what Patanjali says next. 13 is the beginning of fruition. Then 5 is sudden change. 6 is predictable change. 7 is the culmination of this fruition. 8 is full fruition, and then we come to the end of its 9 series again, and we'll see how, where this would be Sutra 18, and we'll see how all that plays out. Anything else from anyone? Thank you, Glenn.
Shankaraji,
Yes, dear.
do you think if we read from the previous thing, 49 and 51, we might have a lot of, if we recapitulate that, the whole idea behind it? Do you want me to read that 49 and 51?
Why not?
Okay. So we'll go back to the chapter 1, 49 and 51. These two sutras will help us, whatever we are discussing, quite a bit.
Okay.
So 49, the knowledge which is gained from inference and the study of scriptures is knowledge of one kind. But the knowledge which is gained from samadhi is of a much higher order. It goes beyond inference and scriptures. Here, Patanjali, of course, these are a little bit, quite a bit is here, but I'm going to read slowly. Here, Patanjali describes two kinds of knowledge. Knowledge obtained through the meditation of the senses and the reason, and the knowledge obtained direct, superconscious experience.
I think the word is mediation rather than meditation.
Yes. Through the mediation, you're right. Through the mediation of the senses and the reason, and the knowledge obtained by direct superconscious experience. Ordinary knowledge comes to us by way of sense perception and the interpretation of these perceptions by our reason.
Which is what's meant by inference.
Yes. Ordinary knowledge is therefore necessarily limited to ordinary objects. That is to say, those...
Let's just pause there for a moment. Yes, okay. It's limited to ordinary objects, but Mother has created so many objects. It's not called Mahamaya for nothing. there's just an endless series of possibilities of objects to contemplate, objects to enjoy, a sunset, a flower, a good meal, all these things. Mother has created all of these things, all of these objects. And so our knowledge of them is of one order, as the Swami says. But we have to be very careful as we live our lives not to get entangled with all of these objects of Mother's universe, of her time, space, and causation. Anything else from anyone about that? All right, please read on, Balakrishna.
That is to say, those kinds of phenomena which are within the grasp of our sense perceptions. When ordinary knowledge attempts to deal with what is extraordinary, its importance is immediately revealed. For example, we have the various scriptures and writings which tell us about the existence of God. We may read these books and accept their teachings up to a certain point, but we cannot claim to know God because we have read them. All that we can say we know is that these scriptures were written by men who claim to know God. Why should we believe them? True, our reason may suggest to us that the authors of the scriptures were probably honest and reliable, not self-deluded or insane, and that, therefore, we should be inclined to believe what they tell us. But such belief can only be partial and provisional. It is very unsatisfactory. It is certainly not knowledge. So now we have two alternatives. Either we must decide that there is only one kind of knowledge limited to the objects of sense contact, and thereby resign ourselves to a permanent agnosticism concerning the teachings of scriptures. Or we must admit the possibility of another, a higher kind of knowledge, which is supersensory and therefore capable of confirming the truth of these teachings through direct experience. Such is the knowledge which is obtained through samadhi. And each one of us has to find it for himself.
And this is what I meant by Savikalpa Samadhi being a game changer, as Glenn put it, a paradigm shift. Because in this, you have this lower knowledge of God, but it is a very full lower knowledge. There is no question left in your mind that the reality is the divinity, not time, space, and causation, the object of sense perception, and our inferences about them. That is something that the divine does, but it is not something that the divine is. And so this is why this Savikalpa Samadhi is devoutly to be desired, because it separates you in that moment. In that moment, it separates you from everything you've experienced before. There is no longer any way to see that in the way that you saw it previously. Any comments or concerns or questions about any of that?
Actually, this can also explain the near-death experience. For one reason or other, all these people that go into this near-death experience, is some kind of samadhi they are going into.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Why? Their life completely changes after it.
Yes, exactly. And particularly those that go into the full experience. Those who have the preliminary experience only, their life changes and they will be different. But those who go on and are absorbed by the light. There's that word again, absorb. Their being is absorbed by the light, embraced by the light. Then when they return from that, as I said, they have had it's a completely different order of experience. So yes, Balakrishna has read about these near-death experiences, I know also. And so I encourage anyone who wants to know about these things to read Raymond Moody's book, Life After Life, or Kenneth Ring's work, or particularly Pim von Lammel's book, Consciousness After Life. The fact that we are consciousness, not this living, not this breathing thing, this jiva. We are consciousness itself that is that the jiva is host to that consciousness, but it doesn't contain it. Thank you, Bala. That was very aptly put.
So, realization, said Swami Vivekananda, is real religion. All the rest is only preparation. Lectures or reading books or reasoning is merely preparation, preparing the ground. It is not religion. Intellectual ascent and intellectual descent are not religion. Religion is, in fact, a severely practical and empirical kind of research. You take nothing on trust. You accept nothing but your own experience.
And this is fundamental. You have tentative faith until you have the experience. Then you have conviction, which is what is meant by the Sanskrit word shraddha. You have conviction and determination to continue in this vein. In a sense, you have no choice. But it isn't that you really don't have any choice. It's just that why would you prefer anything less? So the word shraddha, this profound word in Sanskrit, which means the unshakable conviction based on empirical experience that this is the truth. And it's why some people will say, you're crazy. You've gone mad. If you try to talk to some people about it. And Sri Ramakrishna said, yes, I am mad, but I am mad for God. Anything else from anyone? All right, were you going to read 51?
No, there is 2 more pages before I reach 51.
Oh, I see, my goodness.
Yes. Maybe we have 6 more minutes. Maybe we should be able to finish one.
Yeah, well, let's finish the
Okay.
49 then.
Yes. You accept nothing but your own experience. You go forward alone, step, like an explorer in a virgin jungle to see what you will find. All that Patanjali or anybody else can do for you is to urge you to attempt the exploration and to offer certain general hints and warnings which may help to you on your way. Patanjali tells us that in the state of nirvichara samadhi, the mind becomes, that is a savikalpa samadhi. The mind becomes pure and filled with truth. The mind is said to be pure because in this state, all the minor thought waves have been swallowed up by one great wave of concentration upon a single object. It is true that seeds of attachment still exist within this wave, but only in a state of suspended animation. For the moment at least, they can do no harm, and it is very improbable that they will ever become fertile again, because having progressed thus far, it is comparatively easy to take the final step which will cause their annihilation. The mind in nirvichara samadhi is said to be filled with truth because it now experiences direct supersensory knowledge. Those who have meditated on some chosen ideal or spiritual personality experience direct contact with that personality no longer as something subjectively imagined, but as something objectively known.
Precisely. That's exactly it. And you see that personality that you were focusing on is just a face of the totality. That chosen ideal, no matter what it is just a face of the total reality of divinity. And so you no longer have a limited conception, the conception of the thoughts and the mind. It's no longer something you've read about. It's no longer something that you just glimpsed from time to time in your concentration and meditation. You understand the totality of the reality of its totality. Any comments or questions from anyone? All right, please read on.
If you have been meditating on Krishna or on Christ or on Ramakrishna and trying to picture any one of them to yourself in your imagination, you will find that your picture dissolves into the reality of a living presence. And in knowing that presence, you will see that your picture of it was imperfect and unlike the living original. Those who have had the experience liken it to the action of a magnet. In the preliminary stages of meditation, the effort seems to come entirely from yourself. You keep forcing your mind to remain pointed at its object. But now you become aware of an outside force, a magnetic power of attraction, which draws your mind in the desired direction so that the effort is no longer your own. This is what is known as grace. I think this is where for the Nirvikalpa Samadhi, you have to have that grace. It's not your own effort anymore.
Well, this is what Sri Ramakrishna says. This is exactly it. And he points to Mother as the source of the grace. Kali.
How can we be sure that the revelations obtained through Samadhi are genuine are genuine revelations and not some form of self-delusion or auto-hypnosis. Common sense suggests several tests. For instance, it is obvious that the knowledge so obtained must not contradict the knowledge which has already been obtained by others. There are many knowers, but there is only one truth. Again, it is clear that this knowledge must be of something which is unknowable by any other means. Unknowable. That is to say, by our ordinary sense perceptions. And finally, this revelation must bring with it a complete renewal of the mind and transformation of character. The right relation between the prayer and conduct, wrote Archbishop Temple, is not the conduct of supremely important, and prayer may help it, but that prayer is supremely important and conduct tests it. And supremely important and conduct tests it. And if this is true in the preliminary phases of spiritual life, it should be even more strikingly demonstrated in the final unitive state of samadhi. In achieving that, one becomes a saint, for as Patanjali says. That finishes 49. So,
Wonderful. And I'll just say, just to put it in the most simple terms that Swami Swahananda used to use, the only true measure of spiritual progress is change in behavior. Because if you have these realizations, if you have these experiences, there's no way that you can continue to think in the way that you thought before. As it was just said, it's transformative. So if you don't think in that way, you do not speak in that way, and you do not act in that way. This is what Swami Swahananda was pointing to. The only true measure of spiritual progress is change in behavior. And if you live with devotees, as we are living with devotees here, and witness them over years, you see them change. For example, many of us in other classes have heard from Tom Carr. I've known Tom Carr now for 13 years. I've seen him practice relentlessly, faithfully, week in, week out, month in, month out, year in, year out for those 13 years. And he is a changed man. As Scrooge says on Christmas morning, I'm not the man I was, I'm not the man I was. Well, Tom Carr, and I only say this about Tom because he himself talks in this way about himself. I'm not telling tales out of school here. He indeed is a changed person. And I've known many, many others, not only here, since I've come to Atlanta, but of course, in all those years since 1973, when I first came to the Vedanta Society of Southern California, I experienced many people, just amazing transformations in people. They became, as was just said by the Swami, they became saintly. And these women and men that this happened to, the only thing you can do is just give them your reverence, because and it isn't that they take it as an egoic experience. They know what it is you're somebody. So, any final thoughts or concerns or questions from anyone? All right, well, it's a nickel after 1. So if no one has any final thoughts or concerns or questions, we'll leave it at that. Now we deeply understand what is meant in this simple prayer when this ancient prayer, Om Hari Om, Om Asato Ma Satkamaya, Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityorma Amrutangamaya, Abir Moiti. O dearly beloved, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from death to immortality. Light us through and through. Light us through and through with thy everlasting, shining presence. That lighting you through and through with the everlasting, shining presence, that is Savikalpa Samadhi. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai, Durga Durga Durga. May we all be safe. May we all be healthy. May we all be cheerful. May we all have peace of mind. May we all know that we are forever in the loving and protective embrace of the Divine Being as our Mother and Father. So, until tomorrow morning, when I hope many of you will, or if not all of you, will attend the annual meeting of the congregation. It's an important gathering. Please come either in person or by Zoom. Just click on your regular Sunday and special events link. It is no special link for this gathering. It's just our regular, it's a special event on a Sunday morning. So just for joining us on Zoom, just click on the Sundays and special events link, and you'll be with us starting at 11 a.m. tomorrow. And it'll probably run a little longer than the hour. So, and if you can come in person, by all means do. But if that's inconvenient or just not practical for you, just please do attend on Zoom. So until then, and next week, may we all be well and in bright spirits, and a good rest of your Saturday to you. Any final thought or concern or question from anyone? All right, dears. Until then, whenever then is, we'll talk later. Isn't it a joy to study Patanjali? Isn't it a joy? Jai, Jai, Jai.